For this assignment, you want to start by downloading the first image, and it is going to be an image of black and white pears. Make sure you hit the download button up here at the top of the page, and you want to drag this pear image down into a blank Photoshop workspace. So once it's open, so we're going to colorize this photo. So to get started, let's start with the background. You want to look at the example I have here. You can choose some of the colors, but I want you to try to stick with this as close as possible. So let's start with the background. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to grab my quick selection tool here on my toolbar. And remember with the quick selection tool, it's like a brush tool where you can adjust the size of the quick selection with your bracket keys next to your P key. I want to go around and click. And this one you can also click and drag. Alright, so you can see here there's a little bit of parts that is selected because I just want the background. So I'm going to zoom in with Control plus, push down my space bar to click and grab so I can move around. And I'm going to use my left bracket key to make my quick selection brush much smaller. And right now my quick selection is set to continue to keep adding to the selection. I want to subtract, so I'm going to hold down Alt on my keyboard, and you should see it turn into a minus. I want to make my brush a little bit smaller, and with holding Alt, I'm going to click and drag to try to remove the stem from my selection. Okay. So that looks pretty good. So I'm going to zoom back out with Control minus. And what I want to do is I want to go down to my adjustment layer here on my toolbar next to my layer mask. And you want to select Hue Saturation. So if I were to try, say, to go ahead and adjust the hue, notice that it is not working. What you have to do is you have to hit the option for Colorize. And you'll see here it colorizes your image. So from here, when I adjust the hue slider, for this, you guys can choose whatever background you'd like. I'm just going to choose kind of a blue. And you can adjust the saturation, but I wouldn't go too strong because the more saturated it is, it starts to look not very realistic. So I'm going to keep the saturation fairly low, and I'm not going to adjust the brightness. So that looks pretty good. So I'm going to close out here. And then next I'm going to colorize the table here. So I'm going to again have my magic wand or my quick selection tool selected. Make my brush a little bit bigger with my brackets. And I'm just going to kind of click and drag just little bits at a time. Quick selection, if you feel like this tool is not working for you, feel free to use the magic wand because you can see here, quick selection is not the most accurate. So again, I'm going to hold Alt to subtract this pair from my selection. The stem here I'm actually okay with because eventually I'm going to turn all the stems of the pears brown anyway, and I'm actually going to turn this table to a brown color. So the table is selected. So now I'm going to again go down to Hue Saturation, hit Colorize, and for a brown is actually kind of a red-orange color, so I'm going to put it around here, and it's more of like it's desaturated a little bit. So brown is essentially like a darker, desaturated red-orange. So I think I want to stick with this. You could adjust the darkness a little bit if you'd like, if you want like a darker brown table. So that looks good so far, but if you zoom in, you want to make sure that you didn't miss any parts. So for example, if I move over to here, notice how I have that little part missing. To fix that, if you look over to your layer panel, notice how when you're selecting things and applying an adjustment layer, it automatically has a layer mask. So what this means, this is my table layer. I'm actually going to title this Table, and this one Background. And the table here, you can see anything that was actually colorized is white. So if I go down to my paintbrush, so make sure you have the regular brush tool. And if I were to like say paint, this is all set all crazy. So I'm going to set my brushes to be more like a harder setting, 100% opacity. Yours might be set to something weird too, so I would check that. So notice if I paint black on that layer mask here, it's hiding that colorizing. Now if I switch to white, I can pull in that brown color. So you just want to make sure that you don't have any of these little tidbits that are missing. So here you want to go in and just kind of touch up anything that was missing, like here. So I'm painting white on the table where I want it to be affected. Okay, so here on the pears, maybe I want to go in and paint in white on that adjustment layer that I created, and it's going to make anything that I paint white on this layer mask into a brown color. Okay, remember if I hit X on my keyboard switches these two colors. So now I want to go to black because I accidentally went over a little bit. So painting black on this layer mask hides that adjustment on those parts. So again, switch to white because I want to reveal the brown colorization adjustment layer. Alright, so zoom out. So that looks pretty good. So all that's left is the pears. So I'm going to grab, again, my quick selection tool and just try to select the pears. Oh boy, it does a really messy of a job. So Alt to subtract from that, because I don't want this table, I just want the pears. I don't even want the stems here. Alright, so again, I'm just clicking little bits at a time. Try to tell my quick selection. Alright, so that looks for the most part good. Don't worry about being super perfect because remember we have layer masks on these adjustment layers and I can adjust these later. So again, adjustment layer, hue saturation, colorize, and then you want to make this kind of, if you look at some pictures of pears, they're kind of almost like a yellow-green. Okay, you can saturate it up a little bit. Alright, that looks pretty good. So I'm going to go ahead and title this adjustment layer Pears. Alright, so now we're going to add some finishing touches. So if you look on the table, you have these reflections of the pears. So to really push the illusion that this is actually in color, we need to add a little bit of color into those reflections. So we can't really select those. This would be really hard to select. So it's easier if you go in and paint them in. So you want to create a new layer, and I'm going to title this layer Reflections. So what I want to do is I want to grab my paintbrush, and I want to set my paintbrush color to this yellow-green color. So I'm kind of clicking on the pear. I want to make sure I'm going to drag it up a little bit. And I want to set my paintbrush to be fairly soft for this so I don't have these hard edges. I'm going to make my brush a little bit bigger. So when I go into paint, see how this looks kind of ridiculous, but it's honestly okay, so kind of trust me on this. So I'm going in, and see how we have these reflections? I'm going in and adding some color to them. So from here, you want to go over to your blending mode options. So make sure your reflection layer is selected. Click your blending modes and turn it to multiply. And it's going to go in and basically blend in your color. So from here, I still feel like this is too much. So I'm just going to adjust the opacity down a little bit. Because I want a little bit of color in those reflections, but not too much. Just a little bit. Alright, so from here, this looks pretty good. So go ahead, file, save as, make sure it's not saving to your downloads folder. I would go to computer, scroll down to your U drive, and save it to your U drive as a PSD. So once you save it there, then save me a JPEG version. So then go to File, Save As. Again, navigate to your computer, U drive if it doesn't tell you that, and change this format to JPEG, JPEG, hit save, and then upload that JPEG to Classroom.